A family of 5 vanished from their quiet Oregon home on a cold February night, leaving behind a community shattered by confusion and desperate for answers. But 9 years later, construction workers breaking ground for a new shopping center make a discovery deep underground that would leave investigators stunned and reveal an incredible tale of survival that defies all logic. The Morrison family had been the heart of Willowbrook, Oregon. David Morrison, a respected architect, his wife Rebecca, a beloved elementary school teacher, their 8-year-old twins Alex and Sophie, and David's mother Ruth, had simply disappeared without explanation. No ransom demands, no bodies found, no trace of where they could have gone. The entire town had mourned them as dead, building a memorial in the town square and holding annual remembrance services. But on a crisp October morning, as excavators dug deep into the earth to lay the foundation for what was supposed to be the town's new shopping complex, the machine's blade struck something that should not have been there. Metal. Concrete. And then, impossibly, the sound of human voices calling out from beneath the ground. What the construction crew uncovered that day would challenge everything the investigators thought they knew about the Morrison family disappearance. Because the Morrisons were not dead, they were not kidnapped. They had been living, breathing, and surviving just 30 feet below the very memorial that had been built in their honor. And the reason they had hidden themselves away would reveal a web of danger so threatening that a family chose to disappear from the world rather than face what was hunting them. To understand why the Morrison family made the impossible choice to vanish from their own lives, you need to know who they were before that fateful February night changed everything. David Morrison was 42 years old when his family disappeared. He had built Morrison architecture from nothing, starting in his garage 15 years earlier, and growing it into one of the most respected firms in the Pacific Northwest. His designs had shaped the skylines of Portland and Seattle, and his reputation for integrity had earned him contracts with major corporations and government agencies alike. David was the kind of man who coached Little League on weekends, volunteered at the food bank, and never missed a school play. Rebecca Morrison, 39, had been teaching 3rd grade at Willowbrook Elementary for 12 years. Parents specifically requested their children be placed in her class because of her patience and creativity. She organized the annual school fundraiser, ran the after-school tutoring program, and had been named Teacher of the Year 3 times. Rebecca was the type of person who remembered every student's birthday and kept photos of former students on her desk for decades. 8-year-old twins Alex and Sophie were the mirror image of their parents' values. Alex, older by 7 minutes, was passionate about building things just like his father, spending hours with construction sets and drawing blueprints for imaginary buildings. Sophie loved books and had already read every chapter book in the school library twice. Both children were straight-A students, active in soccer and swimming, and known throughout the community for their polite manners and bright smiles. Ruth Morrison, David's 68-year-old mother, had moved in with the family 2 years before their disappearance after David's father passed away. Ruth was a retired nurse who spent her days tending to the family's garden, volunteering at the local hospital, and serving as the neighborhood's unofficial grandmother. Children from blocks away would stop by just to get one of her famous chocolate chip cookies and hear her tell adventure tales from her nursing days. The Morrison home on Cedar Lane was a testament to David's architectural skills and Rebecca's eye for creating a warm, welcoming space. The custom-built house featured large windows that flooded the rooms with natural light, built-in bookshelves that Rebecca kept filled with novels and educational materials, and a workshop in the basement where David and Alex would spend Saturday mornings building birdhouses and model airplanes. Their daily routine was as predictable as clockwork. David left for work at 7:30 each morning, stopping at the local coffee shop where the barista already had his order ready. Rebecca walked to the elementary school with the twins, staying after hours to prepare lessons and tutor struggling students. Ruth would spend her mornings tending to her prize-winning rose garden, her afternoons volunteering, and her evenings helping the twins with homework, while Rebecca prepared dinner. The family attended Willowbrook Community Church every Sunday, where David served on the building committee and Rebecca taught Sunday school. They hosted an annual barbecue for the entire neighborhood, donated generously to local charities, and had never been involved in any controversy or conflict. This was not a family with secrets. This was not a family with enemies. This was not a family anyone could imagine, simply walking away from their perfect life, which made what happened on February 14th so completely baffling. February 14th started like any other Tuesday in the Morrison household. David kissed Rebecca goodbye at 7:25, 5 minutes earlier than usual because he wanted to stop and buy her Valentine's Day flowers. Rebecca walked Alex and Sophie to school at 8:15, chatting with other parents about the upcoming spring carnival. Ruth spent the morning repotting plants in the greenhouse David had built for her as a Christmas present. The last confirmed sighting of any Morrison family member was at 3:45 that afternoon, when Rebecca picked up groceries at Willowbrook Market. Store security cameras captured her buying ingredients for David's favorite meal, pot roast with carrots and potatoes. She seemed relaxed, smiling at the cashier and helping an elderly customer reach something from a high shelf. David's secretary, Margaret Chen, said he left the office at 5 o'clock sharp, mentioning he wanted to get home to help Alex with a science project about bridges. The school confirmed that both twins had been picked up by Rebecca at normal dismissal time. Ruth's neighbor, Patricia Williams, saw her watering her indoor plants around 4:30 and waved from across the yard. At 6:15, David's business partner, Michael Rodriguez, called the Morrison home to discuss a client meeting scheduled for the next morning. The phone rang and rang with no answer. This was unusual because someone was always home at dinner time, and the family never let calls go to voicemail during evening hours. At 7:30, Rebecca's sister Karen became worried when Rebecca failed to show up for their weekly Tuesday night phone call. Karen lived in California, but she and Rebecca had not missed their weekly conversation in over 5 years. When Karen called the house repeatedly and got no response, she contacted Patricia Williams and asked her to check on the family. Patricia found the Morrison home exactly as it always looked from the outside. The porch light was on. David's car was in the driveway. Rebecca's car was in the garage. The lights were on, in the kitchen and living room, but when Patricia knocked on the front door and rang the doorbell repeatedly, no one answered. Growing concerned, Patricia used the spare key that Ruth had given her for emergencies. She opened the front door and called out, but the house was completely silent. The pot roast was in the slow cooker, perfectly cooked, but getting cold. The twins' backpacks were placed neatly by the stairs. Ruth's knitting project was sitting on her favorite chair with the needles still in place, as if she had just set it down. Patricia immediately called the police. Detective Robert Hayes arrived at the Morrison home at 8:45 and began what would become the most puzzling missing persons investigation in Willowbrook's history. There were no signs of struggle anywhere in the house. No broken dishes, overturned furniture, or disturbed belongings. The family's wallets and purses were missing, but their credit cards and bank accounts showed no activity after 3:30 that afternoon. All of the family's personal items remained in place. Rebecca's jewelry was in her jewelry box. David's expensive watch collection was untouched. The twins' favorite toys and stuffed animals were in their rooms. Ruth's medications were in the bathroom cabinet. Suitcases were still in the closets. Winter coats hung on hooks by the door. The investigation revealed details that made the disappearance even more mystifying. The family's cell phones were found lined up on the kitchen counter, all turned off. David's laptop was closed, but still plugged in on his desk. Rebecca's gradebook was open to the page where she had been recording test scores. A pot of coffee was still warm in the kitchen. Most strangely, the back door was unlocked, which Patricia Williams insisted was completely unlike the Morrison family. Ruth was particularly careful about home security and always checked every lock twice before bedtime. Detective Hayes interviewed everyone who had contact with the Morrison family in the days leading up to their disappearance. Co-workers, neighbors, church members, parents of the twins' classmates, grocery store employees, and family friends all reported the same thing. The Morrisons had seemed perfectly normal, happy, and showed no signs of distress or unusual behavior. The search effort that followed was unprecedented for a town the size of Willowbrook. Volunteers combed through forests, searched abandoned buildings, dragged local ponds and rivers, and distributed missing person flyers throughout Oregon and neighboring states. Helicopters with thermal imaging equipment flew over the area for weeks. Search dogs followed scents to the edge of town before losing the trail completely. Media attention brought the case national coverage. The Morrison family appeared on missing persons websites, television shows, and newspaper articles across the country. Tips poured in from people who thought they had seen the family in different states. But every lead turned out to be mistaken identity or wishful thinking. As months passed, with no credible sightings, no ransom demands, and no evidence of foul play, the investigations stalled. Detective Hayes worked the case for 3 years before reluctantly moving it to the cold case files. The Morrison home sat empty, maintained by Rebecca's sister Karen, who refused to give up hope that her family would someday return. The community of Willowbrook was forever changed by the disappearance. The memorial garden built in the town square became a place where people would sit and wonder what had happened to a family that had meant so much to so many. Annual remembrance services drew hundreds of people who shared memories of the Morrison family's kindness and generosity. But what no one in Willowbrook knew was that just 30 feet beneath that memorial garden, 5 people were living in carefully planned secret, waiting for the day when it would finally be safe to return to the world above. 9 years after the Morrison family vanished, Willowbrook had grown from a quiet town of 5,000 people to a bustling community of nearly 15,000. The population boom brought new businesses, expanded schools, and the need for more commercial development. The town council approved construction of a major shopping center on a vacant lot adjacent to the memorial garden, hoping to create jobs and boost the local economy. Thompson Construction Company won the contract to build the Willowbrook Commons shopping center. The project required extensive excavation to install underground utilities and create a basement level for storage and maintenance facilities. On October 12th, a Tuesday morning that started like any other construction day, crew foreman Gary Nelson was operating the primary excavator when he hit something that should not have been there. The machine's bucket struck what sounded like metal, creating a hollow ringing sound that echoed across the construction site. Gary shut off the engine and climbed down to investigate. Brushing away dirt and debris, he discovered what appeared to be a steel ventilation pipe protruding from the ground at an angle that suggested it was part of a larger underground structure. Gary called his supervisor, Linda Foster, who examined the discovery and immediately contacted the city planning office. No permits had been issued for underground construction in this area. No utility companies had infrastructure at this location. The pipe appeared to be professionally installed, but was not on any official blueprints or survey maps. City Inspector Thomas Wright arrived within an hour and authorized careful excavation around the mysterious pipe. As the crew used hand tools to dig around the area, they uncovered more pipes, what appeared to be a concrete foundation, and most shocking of all, a heavy steel door built into what was clearly an underground structure. Linda Foster approached the steel door and knocked loudly, more out of curiosity than any expectation of a response. The construction site fell silent as everyone stopped working to listen. From somewhere deep underground came the sound of multiple voices calling out in response. Linda jumped back from the door and immediately called 911. Within minutes, police cars, fire trucks, and ambulances were racing toward the construction site. Detective Maria Santos, who had taken over cold cases from the recently retired Detective Hayes, arrived to find a crowd of emergency responders gathered around what was clearly the entrance to an elaborate underground bunker. The steel door was locked from the inside, but the voices from below were growing louder and more excited. Someone was shouting that they were okay, that they needed help getting out, and asking if it was safe to come up. Detective Santos used a megaphone to communicate with whoever was trapped underground. "This is Detective Santos, with the Willowbrook Police Department. Can you tell me how many people are down there, and if anyone needs immediate medical attention?" The response that came back made Detective Santos's hands shake as she held the megaphone. "This is David Morrison. There are 5 of us down here, my wife Rebecca, my mother Ruth, and my children, Alex and Sophie. We have been waiting a very long time for it to be safe to come out. Is it safe now?" Detective Santos stared at the steel door as the impossible reality sank in. The Morrison family, mourned as dead for 9 years, had been living directly beneath the memorial, built in their honor. Fire department specialists used hydraulic tools to carefully open the locked door, revealing a set of concrete stairs leading down into a well-lit underground space. Detective Santos was the first person to descend into the bunker, and what she found defied every assumption about what had happened to the Morrison family. David Morrison, now 51 but looking older due to 9 years without sunlight, was waiting at the bottom of the stairs. Behind him stood Rebecca, Ruth, and 2 teenagers who had been 8-year-old children when they disappeared. All 5 family members appeared to be in good health, though clearly overwhelmed by the sudden arrival of the outside world. The underground bunker was a marvel of engineering and planning. David had constructed a living space that included sleeping areas, a kitchen, a bathroom with running water, a workshop, a classroom area where Rebecca had continued teaching the twins, and even a small library. Solar panels hidden at ground level provided electricity. A sophisticated air filtration system kept the environment healthy. Food storage areas contained supplies that had been carefully rationed over 9 years. As paramedics examined the family members, Detective Santos began asking the questions that the entire town had been waiting 9 years to have answered. Why had the Morrison family chosen to disappear? What had they been hiding from? And how had they managed to survive underground for nearly a decade? The answers would reveal a tale of danger, sacrifice, and family love that exceeded even the most creative theories that had circulated about their disappearance. As the Morrison family was transported to Willowbrook General Hospital for medical evaluation, David Morrison began explaining to Detective Santos why they had made the extraordinary decision to fake their own deaths and live underground for 9 years. 3 weeks before their disappearance, David had been working late at his architecture firm when he accidentally discovered something that would put his entire family in mortal danger. While searching for project files in his business partner Michael Rodriguez's office, David found documents that revealed Rodriguez was secretly involved with a criminal organization that used Morrison architecture as a front for money laundering operations. The architectural firm had been designing and building structures that appeared to be legitimate commercial buildings, but were actually facilities for illegal activities. Warehouses that looked like normal storage facilities were actually drug processing centers. Office buildings contained hidden rooms for counterfeit currency operations. Retail stores were fronts for human trafficking networks. David realized that his architectural plans, his professional reputation, and his business connections had been used to create infrastructure for organized crime without his knowledge. Worse, he discovered that several recent projects he had personally designed contained features he had never authorized: hidden passages, secret rooms, and underground tunnels that connected to other criminal facilities. When David confronted Rodriguez about the documents, his business partner revealed the true scope of the operation and made it clear that David had 2 choices: become a willing participant in the criminal enterprise, or be eliminated as a threat to their security. Rodriguez explained that the criminal organization had been monitoring David's family for months, learning their routines, mapping their daily activities, and preparing contingency plans in case David ever discovered the truth about his company. The organization had contacts in law enforcement, which meant going to the police would only result in David's family being killed before any arrests could be made. Rodriguez gave David 48 hours to make his decision. If David agreed to cooperate, his family would be safe, and he would be richly compensated for his architectural services. If David refused or attempted to expose the operation, the organization would kill his wife, children, and mother, making their deaths look like a tragic accident. David knew he could not cooperate with criminals, but he also could not risk his family's lives by going to the authorities. This left him with only one option: make his family disappear completely until it was safe to return. For the past 2 years, anticipating that his growing success might eventually attract unwanted attention, David had been secretly constructing an underground bunker beneath a vacant lot on the edge of town. What had started as a mild prepper hobby had evolved into a sophisticated survival shelter that could sustain his family for extended periods. The bunker was accessed through a hidden entrance in the basement of an abandoned building that David had quietly purchased through a shell company. He had used his architectural expertise to design a living space that included renewable energy, water filtration, waste management, and food storage systems that could support 5 people for years. On the night of February 14th, David came home and explained the situation to his family. Rebecca, Ruth, Alex, and Sophie listened in stunned silence as David outlined the danger they were facing and the choice they had to make. They could attempt to run and hope the criminal organization would not find them, or they could disappear completely and wait for the organization to be destroyed by law enforcement. The family made the decision together. They would enter the bunker that night and remain hidden until it was absolutely safe to return to their normal lives. They packed minimal personal belongings, turned off their cell phones, and walked away from their comfortable existence into an underground world of uncertainty. Ruth, despite her age, insisted she would rather live in a bunker with her family than live in safety while knowing they were in danger. Rebecca told David that wherever he and the children were, that was where she belonged. Alex and Sophie, though frightened and confused, trusted their parents completely and bravely accepted the adventure ahead of them. The family spent the next 9 years creating a new kind of normal life, 30 feet underground. Rebecca continued homeschooling Alex and Sophie, using materials David periodically retrieved from the abandoned building above. Ruth maintained a small garden using artificial lights and hydroponic systems David had installed. David monitored news and law enforcement databases, using internet connections routed through multiple servers to hide their location. Alex and Sophie, now 17 years old, had grown into remarkable young adults despite their isolation. Alex had learned advanced engineering and construction skills from his father and had helped expand and improve the bunker over the years. Sophie had read every book David could safely acquire and had written dozens of short tales and journals documenting their underground life. The family had remained hidden for 9 years because the criminal organization continued operating and expanding throughout the Pacific Northwest. David's monitoring revealed that law enforcement investigations were getting closer to exposing the network, but arrests had not yet been made. The family had agreed they would not emerge until they were certain the threat was completely eliminated. The construction discovery that forced their emergence had actually come at the perfect time. Just 3 weeks earlier, a joint Federal Bureau of Investigation and Drug Enforcement Administration task force had arrested over 60 members of the criminal organization, including Michael Rodriguez. The network had been completely dismantled, and the threat to the Morrison family had finally ended. David had been preparing to initiate contact with law enforcement when the excavator broke through their carefully hidden entrance. After 9 years of patient waiting, the Morrison family was finally free to return to the world above ground. The return of the Morrison family to Willowbrook created a media sensation that brought reporters and television crews from across the country to the small Oregon town. But for the family themselves, the focus was not on fame or attention, but on the enormous task of rebuilding their lives after 9 years in isolation. Medical examinations revealed that all 5 family members were in remarkably good health. Ruth, now 77, had actually improved her physical condition through daily exercise routines. David had designed to keep the family fit in their confined space. Rebecca and David showed no signs of serious physical or psychological trauma. Alex and Sophie, despite missing traditional teenage experiences, had developed into mature, intelligent, and emotionally stable young adults. The family's first priority was reconnecting with relatives and friends who had mourned them for nearly a decade. Rebecca's sister, Karen, flew in from California and spent 3 days crying tears of joy and disbelief. Church members, former co-workers, and neighbors organized a community celebration that filled the town square with people who wanted to welcome the Morrison family home. Alex and Sophie faced the unique challenge of integrating into a world that had changed dramatically during their underground years. Technology had advanced significantly, social media had become ubiquitous, and their former classmates were now preparing for college graduation. However, their extensive reading and Rebecca's continued education had prepared them well academically, and both twins tested at college level in multiple subjects. David discovered that his reputation as an architect had actually grown during his absence. The buildings he had designed before disappearing had won several awards, and his presumed death had created demand for his remaining projects. With the criminal organization eliminated, David was able to restart Morrison architecture and found that clients were eager to work with the man who had become a local legend. Rebecca returned to teaching at Willowbrook Elementary, where she was welcomed back with enthusiasm by staff and parents who remembered her dedication and skill. Her experience homeschooling Alex and Sophie during their underground years had actually enhanced her teaching abilities, and she brought new creativity and patience to her classroom. Ruth, despite her advanced age, thrived in her return to the surface world. She resumed her volunteer work at the hospital, replanted her rose garden, and became something of a celebrity among senior citizens who were amazed by her resilience and positive attitude. Ruth often said that living underground with her family had been preferable to living safely without them. The Morrison family chose to keep the location of their bunker secret, working with authorities to seal the entrance and ensuring that their survival methods could not be used by others with less noble intentions. David donated his architectural expertise to help law enforcement identify and repurpose the criminal facilities that had been built using his unwitting designs. Most importantly, the Morrison family's ordeal had strengthened their bonds in ways that few families ever experience. They had faced the ultimate test of loyalty and sacrifice, choosing to give up everything they loved about their normal lives rather than compromise their values or risk each other's safety. Their tale became a powerful reminder of what families can accomplish when they stand together against impossible odds. David and Rebecca's willingness to sacrifice their careers and comfortable lifestyle to protect their children inspired parents throughout the community. Ruth's determination to stay with her family regardless of hardship touched senior citizens who had thought their useful years were behind them. Alex and Sophie's resilience and positive attitude, despite missing traditional childhood experiences, gave hope to young people facing their own challenges. The memorial garden that had honored the missing Morrison family was transformed into the Morrison Family Resilience Garden, celebrating not their presumed deaths, but their incredible survival and return. The garden became a place where community members could reflect on the importance of family loyalty, personal sacrifice, and the strength that comes from facing adversity together. If you have found yourself inspired by the Morrison family's incredible journey of survival and sacrifice, consider subscribing to True Crime Seat for more amazing tales of human resilience and the lengths people will go to protect those they love. Share this unbelievable account with someone who needs to be reminded that families can overcome even the most impossible circumstances when they refuse to give up on each other. What would you be willing to sacrifice to keep your family safe?